morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2. Hope you all had a great day yesterday and a great evening. So to kick off this morning, we have a very powerful kick-ass session on brand safety with the fabulous Claire Atkin and Nandini Jammi, who will be joining us on stage later for a Q&A. A reminder, please, as we go through this session, as you go through Claire's talk, any questions, please put on Slido, which we can address later. Clearly, all the conversation on brand safety, disinformation, ethics, all very high on brands' agenda. It was in the UK that we had the headline, back in 2017, brands funding terror, that really kicked off the topic, and put it really, really high up there on the agenda. In the UK, it called for us, calling for regulation in the form of the Online Safety Bill and Online Advertising Programme. You're obviously ahead of us in Europe with the Digital Service Act already in place. It's also led to a lot of focus on self-regulation, which is really important, basically helping brands to help themselves, working with the likes of GARM, with the Global Disinformation Index, with their Conscious Advertising Network, with GDI, people who are helping to support brands on their journey. So on that note, please let me introduce you to Claire, co-founder of Check My Ads, the ad tech industry's first watchdog, here to talk about the global disinformation crisis and digital advertising's role. Thank you, Claire.
Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. Hi, this is a real honor. This is a very, very powerful room, which is why today I am proposing that we once and for all dismantle the disinformation economy, that we fix the disinformation crisis. I don't need to tell you that we are in a disinformation crisis. In America, in the last 10 years, we've lost 30,000 journalism jobs. In the last 5 years, globally, newspaper advertising revenue has been cut by half. Meanwhile, disinformation is thriving. It's estimated that $2.8 billion went to disinformation in America last year, but that doesn't even include Fox News. Our media landscape has moved beyond a left versus right discussion. We are now in a world where moderates, people who believe in democracy and debate, are having to protect those values against extremism, against people who are systematically and consistently lying to cause violence. We're not talking about a gray area any longer. We're talking about the worst of the worst. How do we stop funding that? The rise of digital advertising follows a trail with the rise of disinformation. Now, digital advertising globally is somewhere between $400 and $700 billion annually. Nobody really knows if it's $400 billion or if it's $700 billion. What we do know, Bobi at ISBA calculated that about 15% of every campaign just disappears. They call it the unknown delta. Conservatively, that accounts for $60 billion that just evaporates off the face of the earth every year. We know that good people are not getting that money. By 2025, the ad tech industry is slated to be the second largest criminal industry after international drug trafficking. So, of course, we're dealing with an incredible bloated system. Now, when I say disinformation economy, a lot of folks, they think of Facebook. Because, of course, Facebook amplifies and profits from disinformation. But Facebook is not where disinformation makes money. Disinformation makes money when users click on that hate bait and go to an external website where a dozen or so ad exchanges, or in this room, SSPs, are waiting to serve them ads. So while Facebook amplifies the disinformation, it is the business relationships, I'm talking contracts, direct deposits, bank account details. It is that business relationship that we are talking about when we talk about the disinformation economy. Now think of this industry from a propagandist's lens. If you are a propagandist, you want three things. You want, of course, to grow and sustain your operations. And you want legitimacy. You want people to believe your lies. And of course, you want to build efficiency, just like any other marketer. You want to be able to better and better target people who are susceptible to lies and to hate, or who are maybe undecided voters. A propagandist gets all of this from ad tech. They get money to sustain and grow their operations. They get ads, which give legitimacy. The brands that we've built for decades, that brand equity, they need that for legitimacy. And data, the personal identifiable information of internet users around the world. From an advertiser's perspective, this is black and white. For years, advertisers have said to ad tech vendors, do not let my ad fund bigotry, xenophobia, racism. And more recently, the World Federation of Advertisers and GARM, the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, have ratified this language in a document they call the brand safety floor. That is, the bar is on the floor for brand safety. What they've said here is under the section of sensitive social issues, they say, do not put our brands anywhere that is conducting the insensitive, irresponsible, or harmful treatment of debated social issues. What this means is if there's a wedge issue in society, be it a global pandemic or something really hot like abortion, if you're using this topic intentionally to drive a division further and further into society to divide us, advertisers don't want to be there. It gives them the ick. We're here because the middlemen have taken control away from advertisers. This is what we call an opaque box. This is how advertisers see the industry. Programmatic advertising, the ad tech vendors in this box have said, don't worry, we'll give you reach, we'll give you click-throughs, we'll get you low CPMs, and brand safety. Now, this black box, it includes all the players in the ad tech system. And it is the beating heart of the disinformation economy. Like it or not, the companies in this opaque box are the traffic controllers of millions and millions of dollars, ads, and data. They control who lives and who doesn't. Advertisers care about where their ads go, and they care about what their customers think. And they have pressured for years ad exchanges, these middlemen, DSPs, SSPs, to say in their policies, don't worry, we will not send your ads to COVID-19 disinformation, election disinformation, hate, and harassment. So all these companies, they have supply policies. But are they being enforced? No. This is a rough drawing of a typical Fortune 500 digital supply chain. We know you're familiar with this. Disinformation outlets we found, at Check My Ads, we found that they are getting access to advertising direct through networks. They're also working with publisher networks. They've even bought web SSPs and sales houses. So, sorry, not SSPs, just sales houses, so that they can become banks of money, ads, and data, and they can distribute all of that as they see fit. So what happens? What do we do? It turns out this room, is in control of what happens next. This is very exciting. This is a very powerful room, so let's fix the problem. At this point, you might be thinking, listen, as an advertiser, I don't have to worry about this because I have brand safety technology. But of course, it doesn't work. Brand safety technology keeps your ads away from unsafe content, or so it claims, by scanning per ad slot. It blocks the ad from appearing if it doesn't like what's on the page, on the article. But of course, this is skimming the surface. In many ways, I often think that brand safety technologies have invented problems for them to solve because they're not solving the real problem, the trafficking of ads, money, and data towards people and institutions that are brand unsafe. So if you do what brand safety tech companies tell you to do, we still end up funding disinformation. But we do end up also blocking the news. The news, trusted publishers where people turn to for important information. If you're using keyword lists, you have to be prepared to block that keyword across all sites, even the brand safe ones. Unfortunately, keyword block lists are being drastically overused. It's okay once in a while, but en masse, it's not appropriate for your brand, and it's really bad for the system. In 2019, The Guardian calculated that just in 4 countries, keyword lists had blocked $3.2 billion from the news. I don't know how many journalism jobs per year that would cover, but it would help a lot. And that was before the pandemic. That was in 2019. During the pandemic, advertisers and their brand safety vendors en masse blocked the keywords coronavirus and COVID-19. So at a time when people were glued to the news, it was a mass defunding event for local news. So IAS and DoubleVerify, they decided to offer an upgrade, contextual intelligence. Contextual intelligence is the idea that a robot can scan a page, can read it like a human, and can decide if that human would feel positive, negative, or neutral. And they would block based on that assessment. I see someone laughing. Folks, this is ridiculous. Consumers with serious purchasing power are not just watching funny videos to make them feel good. They're reading the news, and they want to see you there. IAS and DoubleVerify won't show you your individual results. You can ask them today, they're here. We've asked them to be more public about how their algorithms work. But there was one time when we found a leak in their algorithm. And with the research firm Analytics, we saw what they were blocking based on contextual intelligence. This is the front page of the New York Times. Half of the articles were having their ads blocked. Imagine not wanting to be on the front page of the New York Times. Okay, so brand safety technology doesn't work. What about supply policy enforcement? SSPs, ad exchanges, DSPs have been listening, and they have adopted increasingly specific language. If you go to Google's publisher policy right now, you'll see a banner at the very top from March of last year, and it says, "Due to the war in Ukraine, we will pause monetization of content that exploits, dismisses, or condones the war." Good. That makes sense. But a month later, we saw that not only were they monetizing countless Russian disinformation outlets, they were also monetizing sanctioned US sanctioned Russian psyops. So it's rare that America comes forth and says, these are the websites that are psyops and also they're US sanctioned. And the penalty for working with a sanctioned entity in the United States is 20 years imprisonment and heavy fines. So Google was sending Citibank and Adidas and Universal Orlando to this US sanctioned website. Clearly, their supply policy was meaning nothing. Okay, but maybe you have a domain block list. These are unsustainable. You can't be on everything but disinformation. First of all, it doesn't make sense for marketing. But second of all, it would involve spending every waking moment following around Google's publisher inventory. It's technically impossible. I mean, every advertiser would need a disinformation team just to keep track of Google's business activities. It's not strategic. This system has forced marketers into a constant state of reaction. Not only are we playing whack-a-mole and skimming the surface, playing catch-up, but we're only able to address the problem after it happens, after we've already been brand unsafe. So how do we stop giving disinformation the opportunity to use our ads and our money? All the solutions that the ad tech industry has offered us as advertisers so far have actually taken away control. What we need to do, and meanwhile, disinformation is investing. They're building into the supply chain, and they are relying on our ad tech vendors not to check what their content is actually doing to society. So what do we have to do? We have to learn how to cut them off at the source, at the ownership level. Instead of going after individuals or individual websites, we have to focus on business networks. We have to understand disinformation as a series of networks, as a system. So in order to keep our brand safe, we have to be able to control where our campaigns are going. We have to be able to target and block at the seller level. Every website on the internet that runs ads is tied to a seller account. And with a seller account, you gain access to the digital advertising ecosystem, and also you get to pool ad revenue into one bank account associated with the seller ID. What happens when advertisers block a website is that the seller account remains active, which allows the disinformation publisher to whip up or partner with new websites and mix brand safe content with brand unsafe content. For advertisers, seller accounts are key to solving this problem. Because when you put a website on your domain block list, the seller account remains active. As advertisers have been distracted by brand safety technology, seller accounts have become a key tool in disinformation operations. Let me tell you a story. Last June, Steve Bannon told a reporter that his show, War Room, was very successful. In fact, it was a cash machine. Steve Bannon was calling for the beheading of Dr. Fauci on this show. Dr. Fauci, the chief medical advisor for the United States. This was very brand unsafe. So he was saying, hey, listen, this War Room, it costs nothing to produce. And I have so many sponsors, I have to add an extra hour to my show. Really? This guy War Room runs on Real America's Voice. It's a whole channel. The entire channel is brand unsafe. Real America's Voice hosts Charlie Kirk and Jack Posobiec, American white nationalist figures who are deeply tied to the insurrection. So who were these advertisers? You want to know? We turned on our TVs to take a look. One of the largest chains of hotels in America was there. One of the largest pet food companies was there. Etsy was sponsoring War Room, talking about border security. Volvo was there. BMW was there. Audi was there. Even Procter & Gamble was there, the largest advertiser in the world who has invested the most in their brand safety practices. How did this come to be? Well, it turns out that Bannon doesn't operate under his own name. He operates under a company called Performance One Media, which is owned by this guy, Robert Sigg, out of Colorado. Performance One Media owns Real America's Voice and Weather Nation. Weather Nation is just a weather channel. It's brand safe. It just runs 24/7 streaming content about the weather. It's been on air since 2010. Real America's Voice is not brand safe. That's established. So when Performance One Media and Steve Bannon launched Real America's Voice in 2020, they took the existing seller accounts that they already had that were meant for Weather Nation and Performance One Media and used it for Real America's Voice. This is the perfect way to sneak disinformation into the supply chain. It's a workaround for domain block lists if you're looking to get money, ads, and data. So in many cases, we found Real America's Voice was leading advertisers to believe that they were advertising on Performance One Media's website or Weather Nation. Last year, we pointed out to ad tech companies that this was happening against the wishes of their advertising clients, and many of the ad exchanges or ad tech companies dropped them, like Yahoo and MediaNet dropped them instantly. But Unruly didn't. Unruly kept the seller ID, but just replaced the domain that it was associated with in their sellers list. So they went from this brand unsafe URL to this brand safe domain. Unruly had swapped them and thought that the seller account was fine. So we wrote about it. And a day after we wrote about it, one of the biggest media buyers that we're connected to contacted us and said, we're going to drop Unruly as a vendor. If they're going to do business like this, we don't want to work with them. And of course, a day after that, Unruly dropped the entire seller account. Thanks to the seller information, we were able to crack this mystery, how Steve Bannon was getting these ads. This type of transparency empowers advertisers to assess risk and make decisions that are right for their brand. For instance, BMW and Procter & Gamble and others stopped running on Weather Nation after this, once they understood the connection. But did you know the vast majority of ad-funded websites have no seller account information? That's because the largest ad exchange in the world, Google, has made them confidential. A significant portion of websites that you advertise on using Google Ads cannot be traced back to a corporation or even a person. So if you wanted to do the kind of detective work that checking your ads requires while using Google, it'd be impossible. Without seller accounts, We can't confirm where our money is going. We can't control our ad budgets. And we cannot keep our ads safe. This is not just a business problem. Next year, in 2024, there will be more than 50 national elections around the world. Indonesia, the largest Muslim country in the world. India, the largest democracy in the world. South Africa, Kenya, England, the United States. Everyone is voting. It's going to be a disinformation tsunami. The funding of disinformation happens at scale and in networks. As marketers, we have to identify the people making the most money off of disinformation, off the backs of our brands. We have to make sure that our brands never provide them with the resources they need. And that means that we have to change how things work around here. Advertisers, we have to demand access to our data. No more high-level reports. We want log-level data. Every advertiser needs log-level data. And I'm not just talking about the campaign reports, also the brand safety reports. We deserve to know when our ads are blocked and when they're going through. You deserve transparency. We need to carry out audits. We need to request these log files. And when we inevitably see where our campaigns are actually going, we need to demand refunds. We need to address the discrepancy between what our vendor has promised us and what we're actually getting. We have to make up for missed expectations. And if they don't do anything, get loud. Talk about it publicly. Of course, we can always move on to different vendors as well. We need to take back control of our ad campaigns. We need to be able to target and block at the seller level. If we can have transparency, we can start to restore balance, to find our ads on journalistic standards, and to avoid funding disinformation. Marketing is not just about reach and click-throughs. It's about who we associate with and how we show up in the world. We are Check My Ads. Please check your ads. And if you have any mysteries to solve in there, contact us. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Powerful stuff. Okay, guys, remember, any questions, please put on Slido. Thank you. Nandini's stuck. I'd just like to reiterate those solutions there and their importance. Yeah, it's really so important that control is taken. Okay, while we're sorting out technicalities over there, Claire, I'll kick off with a question from the audience. Is there any framework that can be used to evaluate the level of disinformation of a website?
Yes, there are lots. We look at like the Journalism Trust Index and what journalistic standards really mean. We suggest focusing on that first. I mean, there are websites that are in the gray area, certain tabloids, for instance. But we're not talking about the gray area today. We're talking about the worst disinformation. We're talking about the sustained and repeated and intentional publication of lies that lead to violence, the scapegoating of marginalized populations for political or financial gain. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the disinformation economy. And journalistic standards and the opposite of journalistic standards is one helpful way to think about it.
Welcome, Nandini.
Hi, nice to be here.
So, Nandini, give us some hope. You have worked in this area since you started Sleeping Giants 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so
It's been a long time.
is there hope for change? Do you see a fix to this problem?
Absolutely. I wouldn't be working on this problem if I didn't think that we could solve it. I am fundamentally optimistic that the keys to solving the disinformation crisis are firmly already in our hands. We see we call the disinformation crisis the disinformation economy for a reason, because it is so squarely right in where the digital advertising sits. And we can control our actions, we can control our decisions within this industry, which means we can decide what happens next with the crisis that we face.
Thank you. Okay. Question here. And I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it because the audience has asked it. Would you say that every journalist at Fox Networks purposely delivers disinformation?
Every journalist?
Every journalist.
Every single one?
I mean, come on, let's be reasonable. There's someone at Fox who's not lying every day.
Allegedly.
There has to be. So listen, it doesn't matter. Okay, I always think of the Epoch Times as well. Okay, the Epoch Times is a disinformation network. They have so many cute farm animal videos. It's adorable. You go there, you can watch bunnies and whatever. They also call the coronavirus the Chinese Communist Party virus. And if you're funding the farm animal videos on Epoch Times, you're funding the entire operation. The same thing goes for Fox News. Now, Fox News has come under a lot of fire this last month because they intentionally, consistently lied hundreds and hundreds of times about whether or not the last American election was legitimate. If you're funding any part of Fox, you're funding these lies. You're funding the undermining of democracy in America.
Okay. Are there already automated tools that can be used to track and verify seller accounts?
Well known. There's one.
Well, we use well known. I'm not sure if you can automate it yet, but we absolutely use it to monitor changes within seller accounts. So we can see when a seller account was added in an inventory, we can see when it was modified, we can see when it was removed. And a lot of the times, ad exchanges don't talk to us directly. The way that we find out that a account has been dropped is simply by seeing that the account has been dropped. And we're so lucky to have this tool available to us, because prior to that, all we had was the sellers.json file that we would have to go in and check every day, .com/sellers. It doesn't make any sense. So we're grateful to have that. We can monitor changes really on a daily basis.
Yeah, so this tool, it's well-known, KNOWN.dev.
Yes.
DEV.
How did you get there? Where did that?
Well known is owned by a guy. His name is Braden, and it's just his. It's not a for-profit. It's not a non-profit. It's just a website, and it's very helpful. We're very grateful for him.
Okay. How do brand safety tools integrate disinformation as a criteria? So I think just a little bit more understanding of actually how they work.
I think that is the perfect question for IAS and Double Verify. We've asked them, and they have refused to answer us.
Okay, a question out around the room then. Thank you for, there's a thank you here. Thanks for pointing the importance of blocking the seller IDs spreading information. How and where can advertisers identify which IDs are spreading lies? I think this is a really key question.
That is the key question. Right now, we're the only watchdog that I know of that's doing this work. What we do is, in our newsletter Branded, we publish stories of what we're finding by looking at seller account data. We don't maintain any lists. We don't really have any resource like that, because we need advertisers to be doing that work with us. So yeah.
Really, we have to go back to the roots of marketing. And marketing is about so much about reputation. And therefore, it's about who we associate with. And when we're thinking about blocking at the seller level, I think that we're not taking the stance that would be most strategic. I think that it would be much more strategic if we were targeting the people that we wanted to be associated with and the organizations, the news outlets that we wanted to be associated with, and focus on positively targeting their seller accounts. And I would do that first. I would do that before focusing on blocking. I would actually think of what are the 4,000 or the 5,000 or 10,000 websites that you actually want to be on? Because everything else doesn't matter. I mean, people are not on that many websites per year. We're just not. We use a few hundred in a month maximum. So be on those ones. Don't worry about blocking so much. Worry about targeting.
This will be music to your ears, and know you're US based at the moment. But the question is, what resources available in Germany or in Europe? How can companies get more information about what's actually going on their doorsteps?
Well, at this time, we are the US watchdog. Unfortunately, we aren't everywhere as we'd like to be, but we actively work with and support organizations that are willing to do this work within their countries. We're not subject matter experts for every country, but we can work with folks who are active within their own countries. And for example, we've been working with a Spanish activist organization called Es País Valencia, and they have successfully demonetized a hate site in Spain using our tactics. So this is very much a scalable process. We just need people to do it.
Hence why you're here today.
Yeah. I mean, the number one thing is that folks have to check their ads.
Yeah.
That's the source of the most information that you're going to get, is if you get those log level files and have a third party auditor actually check it out. Or do it yourself. Get an intern to look through the thousands and thousands of websites.
And I'll add to that the work that we've been talking about today with regards to seller accounts is just one tiny fraction of the work that needs to be done. We do this work using open source tools. So we don't necessarily know what's going on. We absolutely don't know. I mean, I'll just say it. We don't know what's going on in your ad spend. So you need to be doing that work as an advertiser to find fraud, to find little oddities in your ad placements, and talk to your vendors and ask them what's going on, and push, really push for that information, because in our experience, vendors will find reasons to not give you answers.
So your message today was very much for brands to take control, but obviously this is something that the whole industry has to embrace, and the whole industry has to take responsibility for. because everybody plays part in the chain. So what's the message for agencies and for ad tech?
Write down your standards and then follow them. It's not that hard to not work with the biggest voices in ad tech. I mean, last year, Check My Ads ran a campaign. It was called Defund the Insurrectionists. Okay? It was run a year after the insurrection. Now, just after the insurrection, this company called Playwire, they're an ad tech company, they added to their policy, they said, we will not work with advertisers that seek to overthrow the government. I'm sorry, publishers that seek to overthrow a government. Well, a year after they wrote that down, they were still working with Charlie Kirk, a millennial white nationalist who had sent 80 buses full of people to the insurrection. These are not hard people to figure out. They're in the news every day. So Charlie Kirk, Dan Bongino, Glenn Beck, Tim Pool, Steve Bannon, we had to defund all of these people by pointing out who still had business relationships with them long after real, big, famous political violence occurred. So do the work. Just pay attention.
Nandini, do you want to expand any more on your campaigns and your approach to defunding?
Yeah, I can't stress enough that literally anybody can do this work. we just happen to dedicate our like day-to-day doing this as our full-time job, but it's really not hard. And a lot of this information is right there in front of us, and we've been able to have so much of an impact just because we take the time to look into the details. But we really are grateful for folks within the industry. We have so many people who work with us behind the scenes, who push for standards and information and audits and reviews from within their organizations, and who really like take the information that we have published and present it to their teams and say, well, what are we going to do about this? And what we do, and the way that we sort of hope to be your partner in all this, is that we provide you with the business case for taking this seriously, for acting on the information that you find within your ad reports. That's what we do. But we count on you to take that information and put it into action.
Interesting question here. Auditors. Have you had conversations with auditors and how they can work with you? Obviously, they look deep into people's business and verification, but have they got this far? Do they look this detailed at all?
If they did, we wouldn't be here.
There's two kinds of auditors. There's the ad tech auditors, supply chain researchers, and we work with supply chain researchers. We are in constant conversation with them. But there's also financial auditors. The supply chain researchers are your friend. We strongly recommend getting your log level data and then finding someone to look through it. And we know they exist, and we would be happy to introduce you if you contact us and need help. Financial auditors could probably pay a lot more attention to this industry and to actual campaigns. And we know that the same people working on the Digital Services Act and the Internet Safety Bill and different bills in the United States that are working towards transparency, we know that they are paying attention to this and that there will be scrutiny at some point. It's just a matter of when.
We have a lot of conversations with how that can progress back in the UK. Going back to seller accounts, you said 90% of Google's seller accounts are confidential. What information source is that based on?
Jounce Media. Jounce Media is a company that took the time to do an analysis of that. So Google.
Yeah. Jounce and Craig Silverman.
Cool. Interesting question here, which I'm really interested in. How do people try and intimidate you? How do you, this is big fire you're playing with. How do people?
They take our pictures, they Photoshop our headshots, and then they Photoshop it on the most disturbing possible backgrounds that you could possibly imagine. And it's very weird and unsettling. And that's probably the most that they do to us. I mean, of course, we got all kinds of hate mail and crap like that. But
and how do you deal with that? How do you deal when you're getting backlash like that?
Well, I mean, if they're taking the time to do that, it's because they're mad at us because our work works. I mean, like, I think it was the end of last year that Sub Gorka was in my DMs calling me a grade A cretin. And there was this other guy who photoshopped my face onto The Godfather and wrote a piece on us calling us the mafia, and then went on War Room with Steve Bannon, where he complained about the sewer people. That's us. And Bannon called us gangster. And I mean, it's like they're all really, really mad, and they don't really have a way to stop us, because all we're doing here is all we do is provide advertising transparency. That's all we do. We just tell people where their ads are showing up and let advertisers make their own decisions. And luckily, advertisers don't want to be funding this stuff. And so the decision is easy, and it's usually very fast.
So tell us what's next for Check My Ads. Where do you go now?
And what do you do if you're the ad tech watchdog and you're just like a team of 9, just trying to make the disinformation economy obsolete? We're focusing increasingly on networks. There's 3 kinds of networks here. There's publisher networks. There's publishers that own each other and that cross-publish different disinformation narratives and sort of cite each other and work to build SEO that way. There's networks of platforms, kind of like a YouTube for disinformation, if you look at Rumble, for instance. And then there's these, what we call dark pool sales houses. There's when an SSP is using a kind of sort of fraudiness. It's not fraud, but it's sort of fraudiness in the supply chain to misrepresent their relationships online. And so what we're doing is we're increasingly understanding disinformation as a system and as a series of networks. And so we're taking out bigger and bigger chunks. But of course, as I said, in 2024, there's going to be more than 50 elections. That is a really scary number. And so what we're doing is we're going to be training a lot of journalists internationally to how to understand the disinformation economy and how to report on it. And of course, if you have any other ideas for what we need to do and what would be most strategic for this industry to do in order to move to dismantle the disinformation economy, we would like to hear from you.
Thanks, Claire. So a lot of powerful stuff heard this morning, which this room just needs to take away. And as we said, it's everybody's responsibility to take action and to consider what you're doing in this space. So Nandini, give us a takeaway. What do you want people, what's the thing you want people to remember, the one takeaway from this session this morning they're going to head off to the day thinking about?
Check your ads. It's in the name, really. So
great.
That's it.
Thank you. Anything else?
I would just say that we'd like for you to keep in touch. We are only as strong as the people we know and the people who agree. Our newsletter is called Branded, and you can sign up right on our homepage at checkmyads.org. I already had all the Twitter accounts, et cetera, up there. We're not hard to find. Nandini is very prolific on LinkedIn and Twitter, so I strongly recommend connecting with her. But we want to hear from you, and we thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you both.